Hello and welcome to India Market Open. The dates are set for the elections that will decide the mandate for the world's largest democracy. But between now and then, you've got a whole bunch of other events, guys. So it's going to be action-packed over the next 3 months.
It's a crazy week today as well, this week.
Yeah.
I mean, 5 central banking meetings, 9 listings, including 7 SME IPO listings, 3 IPOs coming out. And we're coming off on a week wherein yields have inched up globally.
Yeah.
So there is a bit of flutter out there.
And the
risk
continues to remain strong.
And the Fed meet, yes?
The big Fed meet to look forward to. Action-packed week, lot of events, but at a time when the backdrop is not very positive. Just to set that stage, volatility has been in the name of the game, and we saw that in global markets as well. So let's quickly take you through what's happened around the world and start with US markets close on Friday, which was in negative territory. So that pressure is beginning to show, including on, I would say, your mega cap tech stock rally is also fizzling out to some extent, whether it's an Nvidia, whether it's your Apple, Meta, etc. So that's seen a weak close. All of the data that has come over the last few days, last week as well, and some over Friday, has made sure that inflation fears are back, and that has become the predominant factor. And Neeraj was talking about bond yields. Bond yields have been inching up. The 10-year is north of 4.3% ahead of that Fed meet, so that nervousness definitely there. Even crude is not in the most positive territory. You've had commentary from OPEC, from the IEA, that is now forecasting tighter supply. So you've had Brent at $85 plus, but that forecast has actually changed for some of these agencies from saying a surfeit of supply to a tighter supply, and a lot of that, of course, because of, I would say, the new leg of the Russia-Ukraine conflict, which is hurting crude prices and the forecast there. But Asia is going to be the big factor. I just want to pull up what's happening in Asia, because you've had China data out, I would say just about 15-20 minutes ago, which is quite positive. It's better than expectations. Economic data on China. So you're seeing the Shanghai inch up, the Nikkei. You have Bank of Japan on Tuesday that will decide its rate cut policy, and it promises to be historical. And guys, we're so focused on the Fed all of the time, but the fact is, for us, Bank of Japan's decision, it becomes very, very crucial on how funds flow into emerging markets.
And dollar yen, I think that's critical as well. I think if they do, there are economists to believe that Japan, after 2007, will be moving out of a negative interest rate regime. Now that will mean a stronger yen. It will of course have impact on Japanese equity markets, but more importantly on the dollar yen trade as well, which is a very critical segment, by the way, in currency markets in India as well. So it's going to be exciting.
So BOJ becomes important. Will you go from negative to 0% interest rate? And that changes the momentum for where global fund managers place their money, if that so happens. Apart from that, I'll quickly pull up what the fund flows were like on Friday to give you an idea of how, I would say, careful investors are being overall, because you don't have very big figures. FI has bought about 849 crores, DI has sold about 682 crores. So the trade setup, I would say, is neutral globally. What about domestically? Of course, huge news weekend with the poll dates out.
Yeah, and there will be so much of data that will color around that as well. So I'll leave that for a special thing that we will do. But yeah, I mean, frankly, from our market's perspective today, global weakness and the uptick in yields predominantly driving the Asia weakness, which is very likely going to wane in on our markets as well. The implied open may or may not give you the correct idea, but very likely that we'll start off on a flattish note or a downward bias, and yes, about 54 odd points downward. So not surprising that this is there. And frankly, I mean, if you look at the bent of the market, independent of the fact that the small caps have done poorly, just look at the sectoral indices last week and that gives you an idea. The differential in the weekly performance between BSE IT, which is a defensive, and BSE real estate, which is the aggressive index, high beta index, 10.5% differential. That is stark. It has not happened in the last many months, and this differential kind of gives you the bend. It's not that people are rushing out to buy IT because fundamentals are strong. It's just some bit of a safe haven kind of parking of money, if you will. And at the same end, real estate is showing some tremendous fundamentals, but high beta. And in the market which is coming off, small caps are coming off, high beta tends to underperform. So 10.5% differential kind of shows you where the bent of the market is. It's very likely that small caps stay range bound with a downward bias, but because so much of selling has happened, that there might be, who knows, just a bit of a pullback that we might see in select small caps. I mean, we probably see auto ancillaries being in the thick of things today by virtue of what happened in Friday with regard to EV. And all those EV-linked auto ancillaries will come back into play today. Some of those chemical companies will come back into the play today because of the Chinese strong data. And who knows, metals might too. We've seen Hindustan Copper do that, but maybe some of the other metal names also come back into fray. So selectively, stocks will do well, but otherwise, the bias seems very difficult to bet on something very constructive for the markets unless we know the Fed won't pivot, but unless the Fed commentary changes ever so slightly.
It's cautiously optimistic is what most people would put it as. And let's not forget, last week was the first week in 5 weeks where the markets actually ended with some cuts. So like Neeraj said, it's going to be volatile. There is a very great possibility of a downward bias on the street. Also, a quick mention on a little bit of economic data that came in on Friday evening, and that's the trade deficit numbers. Have widened for the month of Feb, coming in at $18.71 billion in Feb from $17.49 billion in January. Exports rose 11.9% from a year ago, and imports were also up 12.2%. Worth putting it down there, it's important data that we track. You've also got the RBI policy mean that will be tracking all these factors cumulatively. And Neeraj also mentioned you've got 9 companies that will be listing, 3 that will be hitting the primary market. So lots of action in that part of the markets as well. The first listing will take place by Kerala-based Popular Vehicles that will be listing on the exchanges tomorrow. So that's everything that you've got to keep a tap on in that sense. But let's take you through stocks. We'll put the focus back on all that, all those pockets of interest that the markets will be seeing. We'll build you up to that over the next 2 hours, or next hour as we gear up for trade this morning. The big story that articles and of course will be in focus is the Adani Group companies. If we can pull those ones up and take a look at the news trigger there. On the weekend, there was an announcement where Adani Group will invest 1.2 lakh crore rupees across portfolio companies in FY25, with 70% of that investment going into renewable energy. Remember, Adani Group's planned investments is 40% higher than the initial invested amount in the current fiscal year. Investments will be made in energy, airports, commodities, cement, and media, to name a few. They would have incurred already $10 billion of investment by 31st of March this year. So Adani Group companies are going to be on your radar this morning. It's going to be interesting to see how the stocks react. A positive up move cannot be ruled out at this stage. Well, apart from that, relatively smaller companies, but it's all about order wins. In fact, between Friday to this morning, a whole barrage of companies have won orders. I'll start with Ircon. They've received the letter of award from the National Highways and Infrastructure Development Corporation for the construction of a 2.5-kilometer twin-tube unidirectional bypass tunnel. This is a big order. In fact, it's to the tune of 630 crores. The stock was already up 4% in trade on Friday. The excitement could continue on back of this order. Railtel as well. Railways have also been buzzing. We saw that last week. We see that this morning, but there have been order wins. Railtel has received quite a significant order too. 352 crores from the Municipal Corporation of Greater Mumbai. They will be supplying, installing mainly HMIs for BMC Health Department. Fourth quarter order inflow, remember, stands at 1,313 crores. So again, a big one there, significant, relatively large in terms of the order book that they would be looking at for fourth quarter. 1,300 odd crores is where this is over 20-30% of that. The stock was up 3.5%, could continue to see a further up move in today's day of trade. But that's the few that we have. But Tamanna, it's going to be auto ancillary in play this morning as well.
Oh, absolutely. And, we saw the first sort of push of this during closing on Friday when the news came in, and we had a really nice piece that Tushar and Sajith put together on the new EV policy, but a clutch of brokerage notes out this morning, and this space is definitely going to be on focus. So the first reaction of the market was you know, a bit negative on your M&Ms, your Tamos, your key PV players who want to be there in the electric space. There was a note out, or there was a statement out from Mahindra & Mahindra over the weekend saying that we welcome the policy and our born electric car is going to be out in 2025. But what's the policy? So they have allowed import of 8,000 units at a lower duty, and this lower duty is significantly lower because it is actually at 15% versus the current duty structure of 70 to 100% for 5 years. Now, the new rules essentially pave way for Tesla, VinFast, all of these players to come into India. So on the face of it, you may see it as negative for your current four-wheeler passenger vehicle players, which is largely, frankly, Tata Motors is dominating that space. The others are trying to play catch-up. Maruti will have to wait and see where they are. For the two-wheeler space, there's a bit of stagnation in growth here. But that's the way forward. Let's just quickly tell you what brokerages are saying. MK is betting on Motherson Sumi as the best play instead of going in for individual OEMs. So Auto Ank in focus. Citi says the new EV policy makes the competitive landscape tougher for future electric cars by Tata Motors and M&M. So keep that in mind. Auto component makers like Sona Comstar, Motherson Sumi stand to benefit from the entry of a Tesla, because remember, all of these incentives are linked to how much they make in India or what components they get from India. It's linked to a PLI scheme as well, and the cap is the same. Nomura says the new EV policy will support the entry of Tesla in India and some other global OEMs, and again, they talk about Sona Comstar, Sansera and Motherson Group. So these are some to watch out for. The other stock that I have on my list is Zydus Life Science. They've got a final nod from the US FDA and 180 days exclusivity for two formulations, finasteride and tadalafil. So these are essentially for something called BPH, which is a benign prostatic hyperplasia, prostate enlargement essentially. So that's an important market as well. And it now has 392 approvals and has filed 460 ANDAs. So the market size is pretty decent for this one formulation. So I would watch out for Zydus. It's fundamentally at least positive news. The other stock on my radar, and I don't know if we've managed to make the graphics, but we can pull it up, is Dronacharya Aerial Innovations. And we're going to talk in some detail about elections and its impact and spaces that are exciting. I know Neeraj is going to talk about Hindustan Aeronautics, but a private player, which is an interesting defense play, is one you could look at. So the news flow is that they've got an order for supply of drone controllers from Northern Command. And that, for a private player, is a big deal. Now, this company has in the past had tie-ups with large private conglomerates, including the Tata Group, the Adani Group, for licensing of pilot training for drones. And now they have this order supply. They also have an order for precision mapping systems from Earthtree Enviro, but the big one is the order from Northern Command. So as drones become a larger and larger play and part of any country's defense arsenal, a player like this, and few listed players in this space. So this is one I'd watch out for, Neeraj.
Most certainly. And you know, autos probably become the auto anks probably become the stocks of the day this morning, but there are a few others. So Torrent Power could be interesting. Remember when they first ventured out into this grid connected wind solar hybrid project piece, the stock was very, very active. Now they've won 300 megawatt LOA from the distribution unit for setting this up. I mean, so give or take about 1,500 crores or slightly more than that. So could be active today. Watch out for Torrent Power. Watch out for International Travel House. It's a small stock, but ITC has entered into a share purchase agreement to acquire 45.36% stake. So ITC is not the stock to focus on. International Travel House is the stock to focus on. So watch out for that one. That will be active in the session today. That's the second one on my radar. And watch out for HAL. That's the third one. It signed a contract worth 2,890 crores with MOD for midlife upgrade of 25 Dornier aircrafts. I mean, HAL, as Samina was jokingly saying this morning, wins an order every second day. I don't know if the stock reacts every second day or no, but frankly, yes. The order book to, at some point of time in the day today, we'll do a piece on the book to bill ratios for some of these defense companies because they've always looked strong. Have they improved in the last 2 or 3 months? That could be an interesting one to focus on. So well, watch out for HAL today. While it was down in Friday's session and while the market may look slightly sluggish, but HAL could be active. There are a few others, guys, but I'm sure you guys have some other stocks as well.
Just commenting on drones and defense. In fact, just out of the budget, I think the Defense Ministry was also very clear that drones is this piece of investment that the government would be very big on making because it's low cost and, of course, massive impact, right? So even looking beyond the company, you mentioned HAL, you've also got Zentech. One of the biggest triggers for Zentech in the last couple of months has been drones. Paras Defense, to name another one, Ratan India, those are the other few in the space that have been moving largely on back of these very big drone order wins.
You know, one piece of news which depends on the way, it's actually disturbing. So there were recent protests, and to quell those protests, drones were used. And yes, that is, you know, it has a whole different set of connotations about how protests are quelled, etc. But the fact is that this is how drones are being used. We thought it's just going to deliver pizzas and burgers at some point. You know, that's also happening. But yeah, warfare, agri. I mean, the use case is, you know, mind-boggling. But I want to come to the next piece that we're talking about.
Stocks.
Or you want to?
There are a few stocks that we should also highlight. So Copran would be in focus because Quant Small Cap Fund bought about 2.5 lakh shares, which is 0.5% of the equity, not too much, at 251 rupees a piece. So Quant action usually at times bring about some reactions. So watch out for Copran. Was up 9% in Friday's session, could be active. Watch out for Hindustan Copper. Very strong delivery-based buying seen on Friday's trade. 1.47 crore shares marked for delivery versus 5-day average of 28 lakh shares. That tells you a story about the quantum of buying that happened in Hindustan Copper. And the reason is because copper prices have surged to 11-month highs on China's plan to cut output. That, coupled with Chinese data, could well be a further trigger.
Just a quick one, Neeraj, on Hindustan Copper. It's now moved into an F&O ban.
Yeah.
So you want to be a little mindful in terms of trading activity. While it looks very positive for the counter, it is in the F&O ban. So a lot of activity may be capped on back of that news flow, on back of that.
And just last piece, since we are talking about delivery data, watch out for these three stocks. The price and the delivery marked versus the 1-month averages for a Cochin Shipyard, Relaxo and ZF Steering. Really strong delivery-based buying seen in each of these in Friday's session. In fact, some pretty strong moves compared to the 5-day averages as well and compared to the 1-month average in the volume front as well. The stocks moved up on Friday by more than 5% with volumes greater than 3 times the last 5-day average volumes for each of these three stocks. So watch out for Cochin, Relaxo and ZF Steering as well.
Just LIC, if we're talking about another one, this might be seen as a bit of a negative. So the government has approved a wage revision of LIC employees, and the overall hike in the wage bill shall be 17%. It incorporates enhancements of the NPS contribution to 14% from 10%. That's going to be perhaps a bit of a hit for LIC. And you know, when we talk about all of these government-run companies which are in favor, at the end of the day, these factors will continue to maybe be a bit of a overhang.